Hi y'all, Sam here, lead teacher of ARC 201. This video will introduce you to creating a portfolio, which you can then use to apply to the University of Washington's undergrad architecture programs. So I'll go through some of the departmental requirements, and then I will show you portfolio composition concepts that you can then use to make your own portfolio. For a full list of application requirements, visit the University of Washington Architecture's admissions webpage. In this video, I will cover only the requirements that are relevant to the portfolio that you'll be making. The first one is that this portfolio will be submitted to the admissions team as a digital PDF, not a physical copy. It'll be a digital PDF. Okay, the next requirement is the cover page. This is the first page of your portfolio. It's the first thing that the admissions team will see, and it must have your name as it appears on MyUW. So the next requirement is that there's a maximum number of pages you can put in your portfolio. There's no minimum page requirement, but there is a maximum, and it's based on which page size you choose. So the department will let you choose either letter size or tabloid size. And you can orient these, either portrait or landscape. The thing to consider here is that your viewers, which would be the admissions team, they're looking at these things on their screens, their computer screens, which tend to be more of a horizontal or landscape formatted frame. And so you're going to set up this document in InDesign to have two pages next to each other. And you can either have those two pages be two portraits or two landscapes. It's up to you, but I would keep the overall proportion more of this horizontal rectangle. Okay, that's it for the basic requirements of the portfolio. There really aren't that many. Now let's move on to composition concepts. So the first thing you want to think about is who's your audience? And in fact, you want that to be the last thing you think about too. At a high level, that's what should drive your composition decisions, is who is your audience? In this case, for this portfolio, these are University of Washington architecture professors and staff members who are going to be looking at a lot of portfolios. And so you want to give them a sense of who you are and how you think and how you make. You want to give them that sense quickly. So you don't want them to be spending any time confused about anything on the page. The best way to do this is by creating a template. A template is a format that you set up that repeats throughout this document that you use as a guide to organize the graphics and text that end up on the page. Here is a template in action. This is a past student's admissions portfolio, and notice all the text on the left-hand side here stays in the same spot on each page. So the project title is up there in the top left. It does not change where it is. And then below that is a little heading that explains what we see on the page. And then there is the class and when this work was done. And then in the bottom left, you see some smaller text on most of the pages that goes into a little more detail about the work that we see on the page. As the graphics change from one page to the next, and as we move through the projects, or even as the background goes from white to black or back to white, as in this student's case, as they played with that background, you'll notice that there's this predictable spot where the information ends up. And this predictability is what a template is all about. It allows the viewer's eye to go to this information quickly and start learning about the work. Did you notice back there that one of the pages actually breaks from the template and establishes one main image across the whole spread and then some information down below? This is one of the nuances of design, is when you establish a rigid system of rules, like a template, and then you break that system once, it actually highlights both the rules and the breaking of them and creates intrigue and drama in the overall composition of the portfolio. Okay, let's go back to your audience again. The viewers of your portfolio. In this case, right, it's the admissions team. You want to give them a sense of who you are quickly by using a template that you set up so that we see the same things in the same places repeated throughout this document. And then the next question is, what is it that you put in there that will give them a sense of who you are? And what exactly do you want to highlight? So the audience, your viewers, the admissions team, what they are concerned with is how you think and how you make. So your thinking, design process, and your craft, or the things you've made and how you've made them. So how do you show thinking in a portfolio? We've talked about in this class how architects and designers consider thinking and making kind of the same thing. When an architect makes something, that is an act of thinking. That made thing, I can then reflect on it and make something new, sort of inspired by that. And I build this flow, this momentum, this design process. And so when you show your thinking, what you're doing is you're showing the various things you've made along the way that tell a story about your design process. This page shows design process as a sequence of models and sketches marching along the bottom of the page and a big interior perspective image of the final project on the top. The process images on the bottom start to resemble the top image more and more as your eye moves to the right. The design thinking on this page is a sequence of sketches above a final rendered section perspective. This student devoted a whole page to thinking, showing the main idea diagram on the left and a grid of sketches and text that move through various architectural ideas on the right. The admission team wants to see your thinking, and they also want to see your craft, or your ability to represent your thinking. This gets into the composition and the content of what goes in your portfolio. So there are a handful of compositional concepts that you should know about. Some you're probably familiar with from the presentation boards you've been making in ARC 201, and some might be new because they're specific to making a portfolio, which is more like this book, this digital book of the work you've been working on for the past couple of years. The order of projects sets the tone for the portfolio overall, but it asks another question, which is, what exactly do you even put in your portfolio? So most past students put in their ARC 201 projects, their ARC 200 projects and drawings, and then anything else that they've worked on in the past couple of years that might be visual or design related. So students will put in paintings, sculpture, or other artwork. Woodworking that they may have done, community projects, photography. Getting back to the order of projects. So you have selected a handful of projects and visual works that you want to include in this portfolio. And then the next task is organizing them. What do you put first, and then next, and then what do you finish with? The formula that over the years has worked the best is you lead with your strongest work. What project displays your thinking and your craft the best? Then your second thing in the portfolio should be what you think is the second strongest work, and so on down the line. Students tend to finish with, at the end of the portfolio, they finish with things from other classes or personal projects or sketches they did while they were traveling. You should be familiar with the concept of hierarchy from the presentation boards you've already made in this course. Hierarchy establishes the importance of things, either on the page or in the portfolio as a whole. When you make an image bigger than the others, you're signaling to your audience to look at this image first and pay attention to it more. Why? Because you've decided that it's a more important demonstration of your thinking and your making. It might be a rendered section that you spent a lot of time on, or it's an axonometric drawing that clearly explains a lot about your project. You can use this axon drawing to allow the other smaller drawings and images of models on the page to tie into the feature image so that all the drawings work together to explain the project. Or the feature image could be a photo of a model that you use to key the other images into. Like on this page, the interior perspectives in the column on the left are keyed into specific spots on the model on the right. You can also think about hierarchy in the portfolio as a whole. As your audience flips from one page to the next, do you break the rigid template on one page to feature a big special image? And finally, keep in mind that not every page needs to have a clear feature image. Some pages look lovely just as a clean sequence of images or drawings that are all the same size. White space is another concept you should already be working with in ARC 201. White space is compositional glue. Your eyes use it to make sense of or bond together the content on the page. White space gives each of the images and text a home somewhere on the page. Not enough white space and the page looks crowded and your audience gets confused. Too much white space and your audience wonders why there isn't more on this page. Adding more white space around an image gives it more breathing room and more importance. I know you have a limited number of pages to work with and you're trying to fit all your best work into this portfolio. You really have to balance this and edit out images that don't seem necessary. It's usually more important to remove something and let everything that remains on the page breathe rather than cramming it all in. Color will likely show up in the graphics you put in your portfolio. You'll probably be using color photographs and tone in your drawings. You don't have to add color to your drawings, but if you do, approach color the same way you've approached the design projects in ARC 201. You are working toward clarity and cohesion. Use color to make images more clear, like highlighting a floor plane with a mellow green tone and making the pochette gray. These color choices improve the overall clarity of the images. If color shows up across multiple images in a project, bond those colors together by creating a color palette that makes the project feel cohesive. This student decided to use light blues and reds throughout this design project to add visual interest on the page. You could decide to make all of your work in the portfolio have a consistent color palette, or you could change from one project to the next. You can use the natural color of the materials to bring color to a page as well, like this page showing the browns of the cardboard and the grays of the clay model. If you add too much color to a page, especially on pages showing design projects, or lots of really strong bold colors, it'll probably look too busy. If you are using bold colors, keep the palette pretty limited to allow the color to add emphasis and clarity. Text is an essential part of the portfolio. Just like in the representations you've been doing of your design ideas in ARC 201, use text to clarify and sharpen your ideas. Well-crafted text will hook your audience in quickly to the ideas represented in the graphics and lure them in to look more carefully at everything on the page. Each project should have a descriptive title that shows up in the same spot based on the template you set up. It's also important to note when the work was done and if it was in a class or something you chose to do on your own. Each project, especially the design projects, should have short paragraphs that explain in a little more detail what we see on the page. As you look through the examples, you can see how past students approached text. You don't have to have a paragraph on every page, but there's almost always at least some text on every page, at a minimum drawing labels. Make sure to use the same font throughout the entire portfolio. Finally, notice the hierarchy in the text in these examples. The title on the page is the biggest, and the paragraphs in the drawing labels are the smallest. Establish a template for this text size hierarchy and apply it consistently on every page. Okay, that's it for portfolio compositional concepts. Next, watch the video where I jump into InDesign and show you how to set up this portfolio document.